Shenarri, it's kind of amazing to see you because I think an hour ago you were wearing chef's whites. Is that right?
That's right. I just finished prepping.
Yay! Shenarri has an awesome dinner tomorrow at Communion, so if anyone doesn't have plans on Friday night, you should go see her in action because this is an excellent opportunity for the West Coast of Seattle.
Thank you. Thank you.
So Shenarri, we have a big topic. We're going to talk about the future of food, so there is a lot. But let's start a little smaller. Can you tell everyone about your background?
Yes. So originally I am from Richmond, Virginia. So I went to college in Washington, D.C. at Howard University. During that time, I worked in restaurants, everything from back of house, front of house, management. I've opened a couple of restaurants with different restaurant groups. And eventually I transitioned to a plant-based vegan diet. During this time, I started experimenting a little bit, cooking, seeing if people like my palate and my flavors and food I was putting out, which later prompted me to relocate to New York, attend the Institute of Culinary Education for their health supportive culinary arts program. During that time, there was a pandemic in the middle of my program, but I also got an offer to open up Cadence, which is a vegan Southern soul food restaurant in New York City during the pandemic as well. So fast forward, I have Cadence, and then I also have Ubuntu in Los Angeles, which is a vegan West African inspired restaurant. That's the short version.
That's good, yes.
Thank you. Yeah.
So, I actually want to talk a little bit about sourcing, and your sourcing, like I think in Los Angeles, it's probably maybe easier. Everyone thinks it's easier. Can you talk about how challenging it is to source ingredients for vegan soul food, which is in itself something that's like really exciting for the world?
Yeah, so I'll touch on both restaurants a little bit because we do have different cuisines and we are offering different things. So in New York, we do sourcing pretty much local. There's a lot of different farms and outlets that kind of help us source the food that we're looking for in New York. So it's a little bit easier. And then we're getting a lot of different produce that is seasonal. So we're kind of creating a menu that reflects the sourcing pretty much. And then for LA, we are doing West African food, so it's a little bit harder sourcing some things. I am fortunate enough to have chef friends in the industry that have different companies which are actually sourcing ingredients straight from Africa. So I'm fortunate enough to be supportive of chef friends, but also people that are helping get these products to the States from the U.S. So I'm kind of, I don't want to say cutting out the middle person, but it's much easier to go this route because I know directly where my things are coming from, and I know that I get to support friends that I want to support and not just some big corporation. Also, LA is a very sunny place, so there is an abundance of produce all year long, whereas I feel like New York, it is a bit more seasonal, but you can find most things in California throughout the year.
So with starting, I mean, I think both of those concepts are so great and so important for both cities. But I remember when Cadence opened, it really seemed like this revolutionary, like something you were like, oh my gosh, wow, yeah. Like vegan, because so much soul food has a meat-centric plate.
Yeah.
So has it been hard, or how do you put vegetables at the center of the plate for a kind of cuisine that I think most people would think, oh, it's barbecue, it's fried chicken, big pile of it.
Yeah. So definitely with Cadence and all of my cooking, I want to introduce people that are trying my food or people that may have different stereotypes or views about vegan and plant-based eating. I want to introduce them to something that it's real, it's flavorful. We're not using like fake processed meats or anything like that. And I want people to actually enjoy vegetables and fruits and nuts and berries for what they are. I think that a lot of time, especially in restaurants and the food industry, these things are overlooked. So it was really important for me to develop concepts that are bringing vegetables to the forefront. As you mentioned, a lot of Southern soul food is very meat forward, but it wasn't always like this. You know, if you're looking at the history of Southern food, soul food, or any food of the diaspora, we couldn't really afford meat. It was something that, you know, you may have once a week, or, you know, if someone got a promotion or something, like meat was something that was more of a special occasion, but we've gotten so far from that. And I just wanted to kind of bring that back to people's attention, like, hey, vegetables aren't new and they're not going anywhere. I think they just need a bit more appreciation. So I do that at the restaurants.
So you should say, I've gone on the record saying that you make the best potato salad I've ever had.
I'm going to
True story.
Yeah, I do. I do. And it's vegan.
And it's vegan. But say what some of the other dishes you have that are like the star of the show at both Cadence and Ubuntu.
So Cadence, the biggest star is our Southern fried lasagna. That's right, fried lasagna. Most people probably have never had that before, so I'm very excited to be innovative in my field and, you know, create something exciting for people that are curious about vegan eating, people that have been only offered salads for most of their dining out experiences. I really wanted to take all of those things into consideration when developing a concept. We also have, you know, a spin on chicken and waffles where we're doing like oyster mushrooms and waffles. We have a delicious buttermilk vegan cornbread where we're using seasonal jams, including one of my favorite recipes from my grandmother, which is a peach cardamom jam. So a lot of family recipes for the Cadence New York restaurant. And then for LA, we are doing West African cuisine. So we're pulling inspiration from Senegal, Nigeria, Ghana, places that I visit and I still go and kind of study and work with different chefs to understand ingredients. I have a funny story about that. Maybe I'll mention later. But our star of our LA restaurant would be our jollof rice arancini. I think most people that are interested in West African cuisine may have tried or heard of jollof rice. Okay, I have a represent. So instead of just a traditional rice, we've taken that and applied an Italian technique with the arancini. On top of that, we do that with a side of tremola sauce. So it's a really exciting way to, one, try West African food, perhaps, especially in LA. A lot of people, they've never had West African cuisine because we're so far from West Africa. And it's also a treat for people eating vegan food. Yeah.
That sounds delicious, and now I'm hungry.
Okay. we can solve
brought
that.
some samples. Will you talk a little bit about some of the innovations that you're seeing and you want to see in kitchens, both professional and home?
There are so many. One of my favorite examples would definitely be with what New York food scene is doing when it comes to vegan, sustainability, and plant-forward restaurants. You're not just getting the mom and pop shops, absolutely nothing wrong with that. You're not just getting places where there's like a salad bar or like a hot bar. You're getting full-blown fine dining vegan restaurants. And I think New York is really taking the lead with that. And you're seeing a lot of chefs get creative, myself included, a part of this wave. But there's been people before me doing it much, much longer. So I'm really inspired by them. And I think one of the most exciting things that I've seen in the past few years is 11 Madison Park actually transitioning to a vegan plant-based menu. And this is one of the top restaurants in the world.
Literally,
so,
yeah.
You know, these are leaders in our food and culinary industry, and, you know, I'm really excited to be cooking during this era. But I think as time goes on and as we pay more attention to sustainability and what we can be doing in our individual restaurants and concepts, people will kind of start to understand the importance of having a more sustainable concept.
I love to think about that. Now, in terms of like some of the big challenges that we're facing, everyone's facing, but you're sort of on the front line of it in a kitchen, what are some of the problems that you're most concerned about? Like, is food waste something that you have thoughts about?
You know, I actually don't really have much food waste. I think that there's just so many different ways to avoid it, and I think that if people stop making the excuses and start actually taking the time to kind of invest in it and implement these programs within your restaurant, you can avoid a lot of food waste. Some things that we do at both of the restaurants, we make sure that if we have any additional food, a lot of times we are offering it to local organizations where we can help feed our community. I've done like many events, and in New York there's like a park by the restaurant. There's a lot of unhoused people there, so we make sure to take food to the unhoused people in the neighborhood. You can do things like family meals, and I'm also a part of a restaurant group. So we have about 10 to 13 different restaurants within a 3-block radius in New York. So a lot of times, hey, these eggplants are going to go bad in about like a couple of days. Do you guys need eggplants? Do you guys want to do an eggplant special? So really it's just communicating, right? There's other things that people can do first in, first out. I hope most restaurants are doing this, whereas you have new produce and orders coming in, but you want to make sure that you're using things during the right time span so that nothing goes to waste. And then also I find that implementing certain ingredients into multiple dishes helps prevent waste as well. So that's something that we like to do at both of the restaurants to make sure that we're kind of like ahead of the game. But I've never really experienced waste because why? Like, why do we need waste? Like, there's so many ways to prevent it.
Preach.
You know? Yeah, I don't know.
Will you say an example, though, of like an ingredient that you use in multiple ways in either of your kitchens, both of your kitchens?
Yes. So let me see. I would say something like tomatoes. Like in New York, we have the fried lasagna, so we're putting tomatoes into the bolognese sauce. We're putting tomatoes into the tomato sauce. We also make fried green tomatoes. We make different sauces with like a tomato base, like we might make ketchup. We're not wasting any tomatoes. Like they're not being wasted. Something else that may be popular, you have onions, mushrooms, things that you can put into a stock. So that's just another example of how you can kind of repurpose these ingredients versus just throwing them away, because I mean there's just too much waste going on. I'm sorry, like it's too much.
That is the truest statement of everything I've heard in the last couple of days. That's what keeps resonating in my world. So if you have extra eggplants, like if your next door restaurant doesn't want them, would you look up a recipe? Would you figure out or go back to your family recipes and figure out what you're going to do with it?
I would, yes. I think that we definitely do it within our restaurant groups, and in LA, it's our only restaurant in LA, but we have made friends with our neighbors. So, the same way that it is in your community, maybe at home, and you might need some sugar or something for an ingredient or a recipe, we do the same thing with our neighbors in our LA restaurants and New York restaurants. But I would always say that there's always something to do with food. Someone's always hungry. Not everyone has the privilege or the access to the foods that we have in our restaurants. So if you can't figure out what to do with your food, I'm pretty sure there's someone in need within a very, short mile radius that you can figure something out. But there's many different ways that we try to avoid food waste. And so far it's been working for the past 3, almost 4 years.
I love it. So you actually talked about 11 Madison Park a little bit ago and the proliferation of vegan restaurants in New York City, which I love to hear. Are you seeing more vegan? Are you seeing more demand for vegan? Are your restaurants more crowded than, I know Cadence was always impossible to get into, and you in fact expanded it. You made it bigger. Are you seeing even more demand from, and from who? Like, are you seeing it across generations or?
I am. I'm seeing a number of vegan restaurants pop up in New York, along with LA as well. I think the timing of us opening both Cadence and Ubuntu was perfect. Granted, we all went through a pandemic, but what this pandemic did is kind of spike the interest and the consciousness about health. Like, what am I putting in my body? Like, what food should I be eating or implementing into my diet? So for us to open a vegan restaurant with soul food where it's such a loved cuisine, but, perhaps people may be wanting to transition their diet a little bit and not miss out on certain foods. So I think the timing of it was perfect. And fortunately enough, I did my research before opening Cadence, and I noticed that there were 0 soul food restaurants that were vegan or vegetable forward in New York. So I knew the timing was perfect. Same thing with Ubuntu in LA. There are 0 West African vegan restaurants, probably in California. I have to check that. But there's definitely none in Los Angeles. So I think the demand for the food that I'm putting out will always be there because I do my research. I'm ahead of the curve, and I know what people want. And I've been in that position transitioning from eating meat and trying to go vegan. I'm like, I don't want tofu and cauliflower wings. Like, I want some food, you know? So I still have a soft spot for people that are in that position because I've been on both sides of it, both as a chef, as a diner, as a vegan, as a non-vegan. I've kind of seen all different aspects of it, so I try to represent and have my food represent for people interested.
So do you have any new restaurant news to tell us? If you've been on the front line of, you know, exactly what's coming, what's next?
I'm not opening any restaurants right now, if that's what you mean. But
Wow.
In terms of, you know, what other restaurants are doing and what I've been seeing as a chef and a diner, I'm just really excited for the future of vegetables in restaurants. I think more people are starting to add vegan options to their menus and vegetable options. And it's not just salads and French fries. We're actually getting some good creative stuff out here, which I appreciate. I think that, you know, it's important for some of these more well-known chefs to kind of lead that wave, right? Because they have that audience, they have the eyes of the world looking at them. So I really do applaud people like 11 Madison Park for making that change. But I'm just really excited to see what our food industry is going to be like in the next couple of years.
Well, you're really part of making that happen. So, Shenarri, thank you so much.
Thank you.